You know, over the last 2 years, the Sculptor has received a ton of internet hype. This is a beautiful looking grinder by Timemore. This is the 064s. The S stands for espresso. And so this guy comes with 64mm burrs, and they are designed, their geometry is for espresso. It can, however, also do pour over. And when I first got this guy, I was wondering, you know, what can I say that hasn't already been said, because it has received already so much praise. But I think I do have some things to say about it, both positive and negative, that I think might bring a little bit of insight to this beautiful little grinder. Now, what I want to say right away is, and which is pretty obvious, this is a beautiful grinder. If you just look at it, how it's built, it's made out of metal. I believe it's die cast aluminum. I've taken the bottom off, in fact, which is really easy to do because these little feet just pop right out and there's 4 screws to remove. It's done very cleanly. It's really a clean build and a beautiful grinder. I've also removed the burrs, which is relatively easy to do. You just have to unscrew this front part. This is the adjustment all the way. It's on a very fine thread. And then you have got 6 Allen screws to remove. And then finally you can get to the burr carrier. So it's a little bit of a pain to get in there, but on the other hand, it's just built so beautifully that I don't really mind. I mean, even the magnet that holds this anodized aluminum lid onto the grinder is held in by threads. This is like a threaded holder here that holds the magnet. I mean, they really thought of a lot of beautiful details here on this grinder. It has received a lot of praise, and I think it's justified. Let's get this guy back on here. Another thing that's interesting about it, and I haven't seen on any other grinder, this must be patented, is how the knocking works. So when you turn this knob on the bottom, what you're doing is knocking up against the inside of the chamber. So as you're turning it, you are pulling a spring down, and as you make it over the edge of what's holding the spring back, it pops back up and it hits the inside of the chamber to let out some grounds. So it's really a nice, it's a beautifully built, beautifully designed haptic grinder. And I think that is really the main reason it's received so much praise. It also has something that I think was new at the time, and that is making the catch cup magnetic. So that just slides into place. Awesome. Now, one thing, I'm not sure if I've heard this mentioned, but I move my grinders around a lot. And one thing I love is that you can just pick this guy up like this, easy. It's almost like, pew, like a pistol. I mean, it's really easy to hold. And I love that. Any machine, whether that's a grinder or espresso machine, that I can pick up with one hand so I can clean underneath or move it around, awesome. So that is something I really enjoy. I also am the kind of guy who likes this big fat button here. You can't miss it. It's also really nice and tactile. It's a metal button, and I think it's polished. It's probably polished steel or aluminum. But anyway, beautiful button. And another thing that you'll notice on the back, which is really cool, is the fact that you can just plug it in here, so you can remove the cord entirely. Super nice for storage or moving or whatever. And you've also got a dial here, so you can switch between 800 RPMs and 1200 RPMs. Now, whether that makes a difference in the cup, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Maybe for me, I'm not really sure I perceived any difference there. I guess what I want to say before I go further into the review is what I like about the machine is it's not only haptically really fun to use, but it's also just beautiful to look at. So every time that I come into my kitchen in the morning and see this guy, it just, I don't know, kind of makes my day, just from an aesthetic standpoint. But anyway, those are like all the good things. What about the bad things? It says right here on the lid that you should only hot start this grinder. So hot starting the grinder means what you're supposed to do is start the grinder, and then you measure out your beans, whatever, so you got 10 grams, and then you pour them in there as it's already running, because the burrs are up to speed. So that's kind of a design flaw, because they include this catch cup I think most people, myself included, are gonna dose into the catch cup and then dump it in there. But you can't dump it in there if the thing is already running. So that's kind of a pain. You need, in that case, 1 dosing cup and 1 catch cup if you wanna hot start this guy. And I will say this, I've noticed I have less spraying, I get better shots, more consistent shots if I hot start this guy compared to cold starting. So do keep that in mind. And look, I just also made a mess here. That's kind of the second negative point about the grinder, is that oftentimes beans will get stuck here in the top. So it's not that steep of a ramp here going into the grinder, and therefore sometimes beans will get stuck even if you're not using RDT. And what I do to get those beans all the way in there is just blow in there. So you can blow in there like that, or use a little blow tool. That can be a little bit annoying. Third thing that I'd like to mention before we get on to our demo is the fact that when I first received it, it was not calibrated to touch burrs. So I like for it to be right at just about the point of touching the burrs to be my end point. And so I had to move actually my pin here from this hole 2 holes backwards. And I think a lot of people do that, in fact. So I can demonstrate that. Right there, that was the end point. So I know a lot of people do that. They'll move this pin 2 backwards in order to get more espresso range, more of the fine range. Okay. And I suppose the last thing to mention before we move on is here's the indicator. So it's a nice contrast. You got red on black. In this case, they also make a white version. So you can see this notch well from the side, but you're normally looking straight on this guy. So you kind of have to like peer around it. Like if I'm looking at it like this, I can't see that red notch, and I have to peer around this side, and I have to go down like this to see, you know, where I'm adjusting it. While aesthetically, nice touch, it's not that practical. It would be nicer if you had the indication further out towards the front of the dial. So anyhow, let's go ahead and do 2 things. I want to do a demo real quick of an espresso and of a pour over, because this can do both. And what is nice is on the lid here, they have got an indication. So for espresso, they say 1 to 4. I'm normally somewhere around 3 or so, 3 to 4. And then for pour over, they say 8 to 13. So I'll probably go up to 11 or 12 for that. So let's get started. Alrighty, down here on the bench, I got the Meraki espresso machine. And the reason I'm using this one to test out the Sculptor is because both grinders are made by Timemore, and this is a 38mm conical inside, and this is the 64mm flapper inside the Sculptor. So I kind of wanted to see what the difference was. And so anyhow, I got my kind of my favorite go-to espresso bean in here. This is an 80% Arabica, 20% Robusta. Yeah, medium. I'd say call that a medium to slightly on the darker side of medium blend or roast. And I got exactly here 18.0. Let's see, first of all, what kind of retention that this has and if any beans get stuck here in the hopper. Because the hopper, as I mentioned, is not very steep. We're going to do a hot start, which means I got to start it now. So I got to transfer the beans first into another container and then put them in. Here we go. Let's see what we get out. 17.9. Let's see if anything got stuck up in here. Oh, yep, there's a whole bean stuck. So let's go ahead and take our handy dandy little blower. Get ground, there you go. All right, now we got our 18.0 out. As I mentioned before, beans can get stuck in here. But let's see what we get out for an espresso. Here we go. 18 grams in. I got the Meraki set at 92 degrees. And I'm gonna set it, I think, at 40 grams out. Excellent. Let's see what we get. Okay. That's what our shot looks like right there. Looks delicious. Oh my goodness. But how's the flavor? Very nougaty. I get big time nougat notes, chocolate notes. This is more on the side of milk chocolate actually. Good sweetness and nice balance on that shot. Good texture too. I would say that if I'm comparing these two, just on the tests I've done so far, this particular bean, it's kind of like my go-to espresso bean. That's nice and syrupy, chocolatey, nougaty. It is really tolerant, to be honest. I can get nice shots from most equipment. I do feel like with the Sculptor, you get a little bit more distinction maybe in the flavor or the depth of flavor, but they're really not that different for this particular bean. Where I have noticed a bigger difference, also on espresso, is if I'm doing something like a lighter roast, where you got more of the acidic notes. There I do find more distinction, or if it's like apple notes in there, it will be easier to perceive those notes on the Sculptor, on the Sculptor in comparison to on the Meraki's included grinder. I think they both do a nice job, but if you're looking for more distinction in flavor notes, being able to perceive them a little bit more easily, I do think that the Sculptor does a better job than a included conical grinder like this one. But anyhow, let's move on to doing a pour over. All right, so for our pour over, I've got an absolutely beautiful bean. Oh my goodness, it smells like maracuya, like mango. It's nuts. These are from Red Rock Cafes, and I'll put a link in the description. Anyhow, I'm gonna set this guy up to, well, let's do it at 11. And we're gonna do a hot start on it. One straggler again. Okay, and we got it all out that time. So let's go ahead and make our drink. I'm going to use a 2-pour method with this Hario switch. Tear it out, and here we go. So the idea here is to do the 1 pour where the water runs through the grounds, and then we're going to close it up, and we're going to do a 2nd pour to add some body and sweetness. So to 240. I'm using the Timemore Duo scale here, by the way, which is pretty cool because it's able to measure what's in the cup as well as the water that you're pouring in. So here we go at 2 minutes. I'm gonna let this water run through. So it's telling me that the total water that I poured in was 240 grams, and what's in the cup now is 175. 180. You know, the coffee grounds do absorb some water, and they're going to retain some of that water. So that's kind of the cool thing about this Duo scale. All right, that looks good right there. 3 minutes, 20 seconds. And we poured in 240 grams, got 203 out in the cup. It smells kind of tea-like, actually. Let's see how it tastes. Holy smokers. Wow, is that sweet. I'm quite delighted because the maracuya really did come through. Wow. Yeah, a lot of maracuya comes through there. Also, some aftertaste of peach. And a little of mango. And actually the taste is not very tea-like. It's really, really excellent, flavorful coffee. And I don't attribute that to my skill because I'm not really a pour-over guy, but really to the bean. It's an incredible bean. I use good water, and I followed, I think, what's a good recipe. But yeah, the 064s is also capable of making a nice pour-over coffee as well. The burrs may not be designed specifically for that, but you can do it. And the thing is, we didn't get any stalling here in the drawdown, so that's nice. This is what the coffee bed looks like right there. And the cup is sweet, amazing fruit notes. It's got a little body to it, and it's a little bit crisp. Delightful. I'm gonna drink this sucker up. To summarize, it's really a beautiful grinder. It's handy because you can pick it up easily. It's weighted nicely, you know, so it's super handy to have around. It's got adjustable speeds, but to be honest, I'm not sure if everybody's gonna notice a difference there. I don't really notice much of a difference in the cup, but haptically, it's just really a joy to use. And if you ever do need to take it apart for anything, it's really nicely built. So it's easy enough to take apart and put back together. It's a beautiful build, and I think a beautiful product. Of course, it does cost a fair amount of money, so you do have to ask yourself the question, do I want to take my hard-earned money and put it for that one grinder or not? And that has to do also with, do you like single dosing? You want to switch between pour over and espresso? If yes, then okay. Then it's probably worth it to get a single dose grinder. If you're always going to do something like espresso, then I think you can probably find a grinder that will do a nice job as well and will be cheaper. But either way, very nice grinder. And that's all I have to say for now about the Sculptor 064s. I hope the video is helpful for you guys. Until next time, I say happy coffee drinking, happy espresso drinking. Bye now.